Thank you all. I just want to do a check because I am running blind with these slides. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you all today. I saw people from Montana and Dallas and Denver, San Diego, upstate New York, and countless other places. Thank you for being here. This time is inspiring already with all of you. Today, we are going to talk about showing up, being present, creating impact. And this is all to create the access that you are looking for. So within the next 20 some minutes here, throw in any comments that you have in the chat. Rocky is going to be my wing woman here, and I'm going to shout out some things to you to throw in there as well. And then at the end, we're going to have a quick Q&A for anything that I could possibly answer that comes to mind for you also. So the goal here is to leave you with the tools to be confident in any room that you walk into as soon as you leave this today. And really, this starts with access. We want to have those opportunities that we gain access to, and they depend on the confidence that you've already inspired in others through your confidence. So it all starts with you, how confident you are to gain that access for people to want to come talk to you, for people to want to hire you and engage with you. We've all been in a room or walked into a room where we thought, do I know that person? Or I feel like I just need to talk to them. You are drawn to them. And this is the access that happens when we have confidence. So we are going to give you 3 power skills today to do just that. And it all starts with you. So when we think about going into things, we have nerves. I had nerves today before I came on. So what do we do to create that consistency, to make sure that we are inspiring and confident in ourselves, and then getting a little bit uncomfortable to practice it? If we think about consistency, we can think of things like the new year, since we're around there still, and we get bombarded with things like new membership to gyms or creating a new home gym that you absolutely need. All of those things we decide if we're going to do or not, and it happens every single year. But what happens after the first month of January? People don't use that membership anymore. The consistency is not there. So let me say this. Let's say all of us in this room today are going to decide to go walk for 30 minutes every single day. And so we go today and we start walking for 30 minutes today. We come home, we look in the mirror, we don't see any change, right? That's okay. It's the first day. So the second day, we go walk for 30 minutes. We feel really good. We come home, look in the mirror, no change. Well, that clearly didn't work, right? Consistency is hard, and change is hard, and getting uncomfortable with that is hard. Here's the interesting thing. If all of us in this room consistently walked for 30 days or for 30 minutes every single day, every single one of us would have success. Every single one of us would see success. The catch? We don't know when. That's the hard part about consistency. So when we're going through here today and thinking about the consistency that we need to have to practice things, to get a little uncomfortable, think about that and think about doing it one more day and one more day and one more day after that, because it will come. And also do these things in some safe spaces. Practice this with friends, with maybe possible coworkers, with the partner that you have in your life. Do in safe spaces to get that comfortable feeling. Now, the second part of this is getting a little bit uncomfortable with things that we might not have known or practiced yet. So I'd love for you all to go ahead and put your hands up in the air, put them in a fist. We there? Good deal. Now, on your right hand, put your thumb up. Left hand, put your pointer finger out. Now switch them. Can you switch them again? Can you switch them faster? It gets uncomfortable, right? This is the uncomfortable feeling that we want to have when we are growing. It's uncomfortable, but it's not inauthentic. So always authentic to ourselves, but a little uncomfortable to grow and blossom. If any of you follow Chris Voss or know who Chris Voss is, it's VOSS. He is a former FBI agent who now talks around negotiating and the neuroscience that happens when we do things that are uncomfortable. So all of you who just did that and got a little bit uncomfortable, You actually had neural pathways that were created for something new today. How amazing is that? So as we go along today and tomorrow in this amazing summit, think about the consistency and getting a little bit uncomfortable. And we're going to talk about how to do that with your confidence today. So we're going to do this with communication. Communication, we think a lot about speaking, but there's 4 different elements and pillars to communication: thinking, listening, speaking, and nonverbal. So I'd love for you guys to throw in the chat right now, which 2 do you feel are the most important out of the 4? And we would get a handful. Rocky, can you please let me know which 2 are kind of coming up here?
Am absolutely monitoring. It's going to take a few minutes as we see it come through. Let's give everybody a few minutes, but let us know what's most important. See, I'm starting to see listening, listening and nonverbal. Listening. I think listening is gonna take it. Nonverbal. We've got some votes for thinking and speaking.
Sweet.
Nonverbal and thinking. Listening and nonverbal. Listening and nonverbal is still taking the top. The thinking is starting to come in, but I think listening and nonverbal is taking it, Amy.
Awesome. Listening and nonverbal, the 2 most important out of the 4. You are absolutely correct if you said listening and nonverbal. Now I'd like to flip that question and say, which 2 do you feel are the least practiced out of the 4? So you can throw that into the chat as well. Which 2 do you feel are the least practiced out of the 4?
Let's see. We're seeing answers come in. I'm not sure. Listening and nonverbal. I love this. Empathy always. Listening and nonverbal is coming up. See what's non-practice. Keep telling us. Listening in big, bold, capital letters. Tracy, no, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Listening and thinking is true.
Nice.
Listening for sure. So I think, Amy, the vote is that listening and nonverbal is also the least practiced. We've got listening and thinking too. We've got, I think it might be a battle. Listening and thinking and listening and nonverbal. It looks like we might have a battle going.
Okay. It's always good if we have a battle. When we think of thinking, we also think, I think anyway, of not thinking before I speak. We've all been there, or we've all heard it from someone else. So the 2 least practiced are listening, and nonverbal. So if we think of the 4, the 2 most important are listening and nonverbal. The 2 least practiced are listening and nonverbal. There's a reason why. If we think about school, if we think about life, if we think about how we connect on a day-to-day, we really focus on, in educating, the thinking around things and the speaking around things. We don't necessarily teach or have been taught about listening or nonverbal, but they're really, really magical and important in your success and how we come across to people in a really impactful, authentic way. So we are going to focus on the nonverbal today and things, but I want to just point out all of them are important, of course. So the thinking would be your prep time, right? So if you are going into an interview, or you're working on a resume, or you're talking to somebody over coffee, having that prep time going in is really important. Prep time should be 60% of the time versus facing someone as well. So if you're doing an interview, it's 60% prep time versus 40% in person. Always making sure that your prep time is more than the face time that you're having. Listening, 95% of us walk around this planet feeling unheard. We have all had that moment where we're talking to someone, maybe it's a best friend, we're like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? And then we look at them and say, are you hearing anything I said? And then they repeat back exactly what we said. That's not listening, that's repeating. So we can work on listening as well. We're not going to get into that too much today, although I will give you some nonverbal to cue in on that. And then speaking, we all know how to speak. We all can practice that a little bit, but we're going to skip over that one today and really focus on these nonverbal skills. And there's a reason why, and we're going to get into that in a minute. So your nonverbal, what is the 7-38-55 rule? If you know what this is, you can throw it in the chat. I won't ask Rocky to read it back. But the 7-38-55 rule is something that Amy Cuddy talks about a lot in her book, Presence. If you are a fan of reading or if you are a fan of TED Talks, you need to check out Amy Cuddy. That's Cuddy. She is a Harvard professor and has an amazing story, her personal story. But she also wrote this book, Presence, that changed the way I did business with people and changed somebody else's really their presence on how they show up. So check it out. Check out her book or her TED Talk. Another interesting thing about her TED Talk, it is the second most viewed TED Talk of all time. So she goes through the 7-38-55 rule. So what is it? Your words. Your words are 7% of how we communicate. Only 7%. So if we think about that, that's not very many, right? 38% is how we're showing up. So our clothes, our hair, our jewelry. It's also tone of voice. So if my tone of voice gets really nervous, here's a trick on this. Go ahead and take a deep breath in. And then on your exhale is when you want to start speaking. The cool thing about this is that it helps you with your tonality, so you don't go up in pitch, because we go up in pitch when we get nervous. And it also magically calms your nerves when you're doing that deep breathing. So that's what we're going to talk about on tone there. How you show up, professional, always. And then the third one is body language. 55% of how we show up is nonverbal. And this is what we're going to talk about with those 3 power skills for you today. Facial expressions we're not going to go into because that's a pretty deep dive, but we're going to talk about your posture and your gestures. So if you look at this picture, this is a not great picture. I apologize on that, but we do not have a great one. This was the very first televised presidential debate between Nixon and Kennedy. And it shows you the parallel between how nonverbal is communicated. Nixon, you're looking at him and you are seeing that he seems a little bit uncomfortable. He has his hand in a fist and he's clenched. His posture is bent over a little bit. His feet and his legs. So if you look at his one foot, I think that's his left leg, is back a little bit, and then his right one is front. In nonverbal world and body language communication, we actually call this the runner stance. So the runner stance is something that we do subconsciously when we want to exit a room. So the next time you are at a happy hour or a bar or an event or a family get together, notice where people's feet are, and if they start pointing out, you will know that they want to leave that conversation. Also, a great thing to check in with on yourself when you are in those areas as well. You'll also notice that he's looking over to Kennedy. And what we do subconsciously is we look for a leader. So when we're walking into a room, we are subconsciously scanning a room and looking for a leader. If you think of people who were watching this on the television, they were watching Nixon look towards a leader. So what happened here was that since this was the very first televised debate, they did some polling. People who did not have a TV yet at home and listened to it on the radio, hands down thought Nixon won when they listened to it. People who watched it, hands down, thought Kennedy won. They did not do another televised presidential debate for 16 years because this had so much impact on the way people decided. And it was all due to the nonverbal communication, not the speaking. So it's pretty impactful. And we also only have a split second to make a first impression. So when we are thinking of those things, how do we make the very big first impression that you're wanting to make, and then really come across with that confidence that you have and letting others feel the confidence to want to have access to you? There are 3 power skills that we're going to take away today. Number 1, posture. We talked about this a little bit when you saw Nixon and his posture was low. We call this low power, right? If we are raised up, we call this high power. You will notice that people who win an event or run across a finish line go into high power. Their arms and hands are up above their head. This is the winner's stance, and we all want to be around a winner. We are just subconsciously drawn to that. So our posture really matters. Well, how can we do this? So I'll give you a couple tricks on this. We can do Superwoman pose. So you put your hands on your hips. I do this before every single meeting. And then it helps you with your posture sitting straight up or if you're standing. And then you just relax your hands and your arms into your lap. You stay with this posture. You want your posture open and connected with people. The other thing we want to recognize is that our meetings, our interviews, our coffee dates, anything that we're doing, they all start way before you walk into the room that you're wanting to walk into. So doing this in the car, prepping your nonverbal, I do this. Prep your nonverbal in the car or before you go on camera, making sure that your posture is there and set for your nonverbal communication before you ever go on screen or walk through the door. The other thing we want to be mindful of is that a lot of times when we're walking into a place and we're meeting somebody face to face, we have these in our hands. We have our phones attached to us always. As soon as we look down at our phone, we are now in low power. This means that our communication is cut off. I'll give you a quick story on this. A couple years ago, I did all of my prep work with these 3 power skills in my car, was walking into a building to do a training for people, and I had some people walking in with me. And we had a little bit of an exchange. I was already set in my meeting and my mindset. It was a great hello. And then we got into the elevator. And what do you do in an elevator? You go to your 4 corners. You don't speak to people, right? And so we were there, but I was already in my mindset of my posture and everything else going on. And the lady next to me said, I feel like I've seen you here before. Do you work in the building? And I said, no, actually, I've never been in the building. I'm doing this training. And so we had a great conversation. She was in the training that I did after that. But if you think about it, I didn't know who she was. She could have been the owner of the bank that I was talking to. You never know who's in there with you. A year ago, similar thing happened. I was speaking at an event. I walked out of my hotel room in my mindset. I was ready to go with my nonverbal. Met a lady. We walked into the elevator, had some niceties. Which floor are you going to? And she mentioned the lobby area because she needed coffee. Anybody who knows me, I am a coffee fan. So she was instantly my bestie. I was like, oh, amazing. Yeah. So we had some exchange on coffee. And then she immediately took out her phone and went to low power. Conversation done. So there's really a huge mindset around this and how we can open that access to create the energy that we're looking for. So posture is your number 1. Your number 2, which is your biggest trust factor, is your hands. So we subconsciously are looking to people's hands as we are walking by them in the grocery store, as we're walking by in the dog run or wherever we are, to make sure that these people are trustworthy. Maybe we want to do business with them. Maybe we want to get to know them better and be friends with them. This goes way back to caveman days, where we would always look for humans to see if they were friend or foe. If they were friend, open-armed, welcoming, hands open. Foe, they would have a weapon in their hand. Subconsciously, as humans, we do this today. So we want to make sure that our hands are expansive and open. We're not in our pockets. We are not crossing our arms, and making sure that we have a really great handshake when we're walking in as well. So that is your number 2. Number 3 is eyes. Is your eye contact. It's easier to have eye contact when we are one-to-one in person. Couple tricks here on virtual. If you have a hard time looking at the little button on your screen and you're constantly looking at the actual person, go ahead and put a little sticky note behind that button that says eyes here, or a big smiley face to help you with that, because you are connecting with them and it's creating oxytocin. Oxytocin is a happy drug, and we all want to be around people that make us feel happy. So the more eye contact we have, especially in a virtual environment, the better. If you are in a large group of people, if you're walking into an office with a handful of people in the room, what we tend to do is scan. So we don't necessarily look at each person. We tend to scan, and so the eye contact is not there. So the thing that you could practice there is when you go in, think of yourself, okay, I have my posture, my hands are out and welcoming, I can say hello. And then what I want to do is at least make eye contact with 2 people in the room. You don't necessarily need to talk to them or engage, just smile and create that eye contact. These are your three. It takes a split second to make that first impression, and it's 76% of the time accurate. We're really good at making first impressions stick. So this is the way that we can do this. So through all of this, with your posture, your hands, and your eyes, this is how you create the access. There was a study done a while ago with interviews. They had a group of people who watched the full interview. So the person came into the room, sat down, had the full interview, walked out of the room. They had a second group of people watch the same interviews, but they had the person walk in and then they cut the interview at 20 seconds in. So all they saw were the people walking in. They did not see them sit down. They did not see any interaction verbally with the person that was interviewing them. Interesting thing that happened here was that then they polled those two groups of who they would hire within the groups that they were looking at. Now, remember, it's the same groups. They just cut it off earlier on the right-hand side to where the nonverbal communication was shown. Each group that they polled the same people that they would hire. They hired the exact same people from each group, and the one watched it for the whole interview. The second one only watched it for 20 seconds. It is a huge impact that we can make for our confidence in our nonverbal communication. Now, if you are like, okay, and that's great, but I don't feel really confident in any of this yet, these things will help you, especially your posture. So if you are feeling nervous, go ahead and stand in front of a mirror, put your hands on your hips, and look at yourself for about a minute with your hands on your hips. If you're really uncomfortable in the mirror, don't use the mirror, just stand with your hands on the hips. It psychologically changed your brain pattern to make you more confident. So if you're feeling a little lack of confidence in yourself, go ahead and practice these three things, making sure that your posture is up and open and expansive. I know especially if we're sitting all day, we get really slunched over. Our hands, making sure our hands are visible, and our eye contact. All three of these are your power skills to create the confidence in yourself and the confidence in others to create that access. So again, the access is the opportunities that you gain depending on the confidence that you've already inspired in others, and the way you do that is through those three power skills. So again, show up, be present, create the impact that you are looking for through some of these nonverbal skills, and practice, practice, practice. Have fun with it, be awkward with it. If you're going to brunch, watch the room and see how many people are aware of their nonverbal. What can you practice in your day-to-day to show up with confidence? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I hope I don't exit out of myself here. And see if you can stop sharing. And if not, then we'll just go to chat and Rocky. If you could look at that for me and see if there's any questions, thoughts that I can answer for you.
And Amy, your share is down, so you're all good.
Okay.
Let's see. Love those tips. Thank you so much for sharing. Standing creates great energy, so people are hearing you. Amazing reminders. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Definitely going to do that in the mirror. Wonder Woman pose works. Yes.
It does work. It does work.
It does work. I love it. Amy, you're just getting a lot of love. Someone said standing versus sitting. Does it matter? Standing versus sitting?
Yeah. So standing versus sitting, especially in a virtual environment, there's lots of studies done, especially since we were all in COVID for a couple of years, on the impact of sitting versus standing when you're having a virtual meeting. And the findings are that there was not a greater impact when you stand versus sit. So I would say do what you do best in the most comfortable form that you want to be in. Just be aware of your posture, especially when you are sitting, because we tend to just really relax easy into that chair. But really, it's up to you. If you have a standing desk and you love that, go ahead and stand. If you prefer sitting, that's okay too. Really, the impact is no different there. It's the posture that's going to come through for you. Great question.
Amy, do you have any tips and tricks for us about how this translates into the virtual world and these types of settings and situations?
Yes. So the cool thing about this is that everything that you do in person translates to virtual. So we have thought about, virtual, we just need to get on the camera and we just need to be there. But really, all of these things that we are communicating in a nonverbal really creates that impact and that confidence in those others and ourselves as well, virtually or in person. So do them either way, and you're going to have the impact that you're looking for.
For sure. Amy, do you have any specific tips or tricks? And this may be a question you may not be ready for, but for someone who's autistic, where it may be a little bit more complicated to carry that confidence.
Yes. So I would say do one. If you can focus on one, start there. And I would say that for anybody. If you're like, ooh, this is a lot. I don't know what to do with my hands. I like my hands in my lap. By the way, I do too. So it's really hard. It's easy for me to move them when I'm talking. But if you are really overwhelmed, start with one. Start with the most comfortable one that you have and go from there and really just try to feel it out a little bit.
Awesome. And
I
then
saw one on the phone. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say same thing for the phone.
Yes. Put the phone away. So put it away as far away as you can get it. Put it in another room. I know that's really hard to do, but put it in another room, because the thing is that you're going to be tempted to look at it. When we were playing music and getting going through this, I looked at my phone. That is something that is innate in us and human nature. So put it far, far away. So you're just not going to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And then I think it's just about time. So I'm going to ask one last question. Any tips on how to stay confident when you're unable to see interviewers during a virtual interview?
Yes. So that's kind of what I just did here. I was running blind a little bit with that PowerPoint, right? So I would say just hone in on yourself. You know who you are. You know the badass that you are when you are centered, and really hone in on that. Do all of those power skills that we talked about, those 3 power skills. Look directly into that little button in that camera and really just be confident in who you are, even though you can't pick up those signals from them, those nonverbal cues from them. Making sure that you are just doing everything you can, because we can only control what we can control. So control everything in your environment, making sure those hands are seen in that virtual world. That will really help you. Another side note on hands too, if that's really hard for you, then use a stabilizer. So for me, a lot of times, if I am not talking all the time, I will hold a pen like this, so my hand is still in that virtual. Or if we have a glass or a cup of coffee, those types of things, we could put those in there and have those stabilizers as well.
I love that about the stabilizers. Amy, thank you. This was incredible.
I am so honored to be here with all of you amazing women. Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me. And if you have any other questions too, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. Find me on my website, salesandpresence.com. And if we didn't get to any of the questions that you guys did ask, please throw them in the LinkedIn Messenger. I'd be happy to answer those for you.